you have less bodies than a woodshop teacher on one hand. You see what I'm saying? So I might say to you, because one of the things I do is I try to help guys, but I might say to you, stop being so hard on yourself, because in the current world that we're in now, with feminism and all the other craziness, to some guys, you would be an absolute gold mine. Guys, welcome to Better Bachelor. My name is Joker with a face for radio and a voice for print. Today, to do something a little bit different, I decided to interview, or I wouldn't even necessarily call it a full interview. It was also a discussion. Erin from Far From Eden. She's a YouTuber. She is anti-feminist. She's a very interesting and rather based woman, if I must say so myself. I hope you enjoy the interview / discussion we had. Started out pretty basic, but I think as we got to know each other a little bit, the conversation got a lot more interesting. Hope you check it out, and we'll see you on the backside. Tell me about your channel. Tell me about what you go by, because we've been sending emails, and I never know what people say publicly. So tell me all that good stuff.
Started my channel in the fall of 2020 because I was encouraged to by the men in my life that had been through all this stuff. And all this stuff meaning divorce, grape, and foodie calls on dates and all the rest of it. And I had a lot to say about it, and they were like, you should make a channel. So I sort of reluctantly did, because writing nobody reads articles anymore. So it's like, I'll just say what I was going to write, and I'll just say it and stick it on YouTube. Maybe, 50 people will see it. So I started that then. And then what was the rest of your question? I'm sorry. What do I go by?
Yeah.
Well, my channel was started as Feminism on Trial, because it started out as being just focused mostly on being anti-feminist. But as it progressed, about a year and a half ago, I changed it to Far From Eden, because I could see how what we're dealing with feminism and the way men are treated mirrored the story of the garden with Adam and Eve. So I thought, well, we were really far from that. And I was like, oh, Far From Eden. So I changed that. So my channel is Far From Eden. In my chat, when I do premieres, I run premieres so I can be in the chat with everybody. And they'll call me Eden, they'll call me FFE. And early on, when I thought nobody's going to see this, I just accidentally refer to myself by my first name, Erin. So the guys picked that up, and so they started calling me Erin, and I don't mind that at all.
Well, yeah, once that kind of stuff gets out there, people are like, oh, I'll show her I listen, and I'm a big fan because I heard this one time she mentioned her name a year ago. And
yes. And I wasn't going to shut them down. So I'm like, I don't mind if you guys, I don't mind, honestly, what they call me. It's fine.
Well, careful. You'll get called some crazy names. You do that. So
that's true.
So your friends first we'll start here. The Far From Eden. Are you Christian? Are you pretty religious, or?
Yes, I'm Christian. However, I have said, and I'll say it again, it will be a cold day in hell when I step foot into another church, because I think they are highly feminized. I think they produce beta men. I think they are anti-masculinity. I think they are very feminist, and it disgusts me what they've become. And I wouldn't say it's even been in the last 20 years, 30 years. I think it's been going on longer than that. I have more research to do on how long I think it's been going on, but it's a long time. So I am a Christian, but as far as like going to church and everything they say about, oh, men should do the right thing and get married. No. And the fact that they say that they won't recognize a marriage unless it's a government marriage, unless it's, sign on the dotted line, that she can, as you say, take cash and prizes if she changes her mind.
Right.
No, absolutely not. On what planet would it ever be that you need the government to sign off on something that God is in charge of? Do you know who was the first to decide that? The Bolsheviks.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, right after that was one of the first things they did when they came in and were taking over 1917, 1918 in Russia, was no-fault divorce. Because guess what? Marriage was no longer run by the church anymore. It was run by the government.
Right.
So as far as I'm concerned, these churches are communist.
Well, when you take the spirituality out of marriage, that's kind of, I mean, I think when you take the meaning out of marriage and the spirituality out of marriage, not that it has to be like a religious spirituality, but it has to be something serious enough that you say, hey, we're going to do this, and it's kind of forever. And then when either the other person disrespects you, or the other person cheats, or the other person lies, or stops putting in effort, or stops taking care of themselves, there does hit a certain point where you say, hey, we're kind of in trouble here a little bit. And now that they've made it so easy, I can, people just bail so quickly on it.
They do, because it's not like, who are they promising to? They think they're either promising the government or they're promising their partner. And the way I see it is, no, you're promising something hot. You're making that promise to something higher than yourself, higher than your partner. You're making that promise to a higher power.
Right.
And you not being happy, it's not relevant. Ladies need to figure out how to get happy, because it is not the man's responsibility to make you happy. No, I wish women could realize this. It's nobody else's responsibility to make you happy. Your happiness is your own responsibility. Happiness does not depend on circumstances.
Right.
And that's one of the things that me being diagnosed with multiple sclerosis 24 years ago taught me. Guess what? I'm actually a lot happier than most women I ever see, and even most people, because it's about perspective. It's about being grateful. And at the end of the day, these women are not grateful, and they think it's somebody else's responsibility to make them happy, and that's a feeling that comes from outward things, material things, and nobody can ever fulfill that. So
except yourself.
Right, except for yourself, right? Nobody outside yourself can fulfill that, nor is it anybody else's responsibility to do so. And one of the things I do on my channel is try to let these men know, look, because men are, to a fault, they are accountable. They are accountable to a fault. And this is what I have learned from talking to these men that have gone through these situations that I knew before they were divorced, like when they were together, and then afterwards. And I see the man, it's not that there's no fault whatsoever. Obviously, when a relationship falls apart, you can always look and say, well, what could I have done better? Because even if one person severely messes up, the other person is going to have something that they could point to, because none of us are perfect. But they go over and above with the accountability thing, and they beat themselves up like, well, what could I have done to make her happy? And what I try to tell them is nothing. At the end of the day, you could have been Jesus Christ himself, and it wouldn't have mattered, because she's not really upset about what you did or didn't do. She's upset because she believed the lies of feminism and thought she was going to find her fulfillment in her career, or this, that, or the other, or you should constantly take her on these lavish vacations and tell her how pretty she is, even though she's, 100 pounds heavier and whatever. You could have done all that and it wouldn't have mattered, because it's within her that's lacking.
Right.
It's because she's completely unfulfilled because she didn't do the filling, and she looked to other things and just is completely off track herself. So the men will beat themselves up and get stuck in that place of blaming themselves too much. And I try to say, no, it's really not you. It's really not you.
So,
and that's a hard hurdle for them to get over, it seems to me.
Well, here's the $1 million question, because I think this is what most guys that watch, there's Just Pearly Things. She's very popular. She's a woman that does this. But, she came out on record several years ago saying, I want to be a YouTuber. It's going to be a business model. She's come out and said, hey, I'm going to make a business out of this. But why first I'll ask you, why do you care? Why do you care? Why do you care what strange men that you'll never know and never, you helped your friends, you talked to them, you convinced them, you said, here's my advice. What made you decide to say, I should put this on the internet and tell everybody?
Okay. Try not to get emotional, because some of the men that I've talked to, some are family members, some are friends. No one was there for them when they were going through this. They somehow made it through the other side and didn't see if they could fly off of a bridge, if you catch my drift.
Yep.
They somehow, thank God, made it to the other side. There are so many men who did not. And I think to myself, I wish I knew then what I know now, so I could tell them this. And what I started to realize is that there's so many men out there that are in that situation. I know that still didn't answer your question. Well, why tell them? Because I wish somebody else would have told those men that I care about at those times, but nobody did. So that's why. Nobody was there to tell my dad when he was going through it. And he said, I feel like a failure. I feel like I failed at marriage. I'm 50 years old and I have nothing. And he had money. He had a property. He had myself and my sister. But my mom had cheated for the second time. The first time he stayed. And, it was 27 years of marriage. And she decided to cheat. And he was just completely empty. And I saw him, and I was the only one that he had to talk to. And I couldn't recognize at the time the depth of what he was going through and the pain that he had. And I'm glad that I was there to talk to him. I went with him I was 23 at the time. I went with him to the divorce attorney, which is probably not appropriate, but I did. And I who else? The fact that somebody like my father or like these other men are going through this alone right now, I can't sit by and have that. There's something about me that just can't sit back and be fine with it.
Well, I think that comes from a good place. Me personally, I started this channel for various reasons. But one of the reasons, and one of the big videos that kind of blew up for me that went very viral, that I ended up taking down when YouTube started squashing channels for certain content, is because I said the F word, I think 100 times in the video. But because if you've ever watched a Goodfellas, it's when they were talking about the restaurant. Do you remember that scene in the restaurant where the mob gets in on the... What's that?
Remind me.
Okay, so there's a guy that comes and he says, hey, he wants either a loan or some help from one of the mob bosses. And the mob says, I'll help you, but we want to be involved with the business. And they bankrupt the business. And when the guy, and the expression is when money's due or when the mob wants something from you, it's F you, pay me. There's no discussion. There's no negotiation. It's F you, pay me. And so that was what I was relating to him. Here's a guy that was supposed to be giving out, 50% or actually a little bit more of his $120,000 salary to a woman that cheated on him, left him, took the kids. And then when he lost his job, he had to pay for her court. Then he loses his job, and then he's working under the table trying to, and they would not adjust it down. So, he's going in terrible debt, trying to keep up with this. They take his driver's license, and in the end, he decides to just step off this globe because of the court systems saying, fuck you, pay me. And so now the kids don't have a dad. Now the kids don't have any money coming in except a little bit from the state, perhaps. And it just infuriated me so much. And I said, as I kind of got into this a little, I did that video and then several months before and after, when I thought about it, and I'm not going to go into too much depth because my viewers know me, but I just said, why is nobody standing up for men, and why is everything we do bad? But that's me sticking up. That's me sticking up for me. That's me sticking up for other guys. To have women come out and say, I'm going to stick up with you too, for you too. That's where you get the chameleon. Why are you doing this? And I'll be honest. I'm looking at your YouTube channel. I see how many subscribers you have, and I see how many views you get. It's very similar to my little news channel that I do on YouTube now, Odd Man Out News. You're not paying the bills. You're not paying the bills with this. So has it become a point where you feel like you have a community, or is it almost like a journal where you vent onto the screen? What is it?
It's both. I think I definitely vent. I was sharing a story just yesterday of a situation that I have right now that there's a woman who's a mail lady, and I'm like, I said to the postal worker who's a man, I was like, oh, that's funny. You expect a woman to be accountable? Anyway, so I shared that little story on YouTube. But as far as me venting, I don't have a struggle. I have female privilege all day long. My life, if I walk outside and I need help is everywhere for me. It always is. The government is there for me. It's fine. I never started this channel as a business. I never did. I've never had a channel before this on any other topic, and there will never be any other topic, because I never was like, I'm going to be a YouTuber, at all. I used to be a horse trainer. I'm a crazy horse chick. So
wait a minute. No. Aren't all horse women crazy?
Yes, it's totally true. And we have that joke. It's not that it makes you crazy. The crazy ones gravitate towards it.
Well, I mean, it's very, very big of you to admit that you're crazy. I think that's wonderful.
Look, I have a video that I made talking about that my mom, I'm 99.9% sure, had borderline personality disorder syndrome. And I am pretty sure I have what I like to refer to as borderline light, because I can be emotional that way. I don't react. And part of that is because my father's British.
A very, very
weird combo.
A very calm, dry sense of humor, I'm guessing. Eh?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Well,
I love that. Yeah.
You said earlier that you're 47.
Yes. 47.
So, married, single, divorced. Tell me the life story. Single. Never married.
Never married. Never pregnant. I say that because I don't want to say I don't have any kids, because there's a lot of ending of young ones before they joined us here on this planet.
Yep.
And I've not done that either. So I had a high school boyfriend, went into college for 1 year, and then he broke up with me. I did not break up with him. And that was devastating. And then I was single for a year, didn't date. And I have to clarify, that actually means, for me, single, because I get these 304s say single, but they don't mean single. I mean, I didn't go on one date. I didn't, nothing.
Not just no dates, not hooking up,
right.
Not right. Yeah.
No, I've never done that. And then I got into a relationship. I then was engaged to that gentleman. Then that was, let's see, 8, 9. So that was like 3 years engaged to him. Horrifyingly made the decision to cohabitate, which was wrong decision to make on my part. And I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in June of 2000. And he broke up with me in July of 2000. And he told my brother-in-law a few months later that I was holding him back, and it was because I was sick. And so
I would think that it really hadn't had that much effect on your life up to that point.
Actually, it's interesting because you would be right in the way that MS usually goes, but it turns out that I had actually had it as a child and nobody realized or picked up on it. The fact that I was very not limber. I don't know the word for not limber, stiff, I guess. Like, yeah. I really wasn't limber. My balance was off. But the thing is that, and this plays into why I do what I do too, I didn't have a pediatrician as a child. And the reason is because they never said it, but I have 2 little brothers who died in infancy. And so I think my parents were like, well, we don't need a doctor because they didn't help Mark and Colin. So we don't need a doctor. We don't trust doctors, et cetera, et cetera. So they never, if they would have taken me to a doctor for some of these issues that I had, which most parents would have, then they would have found out. And so my whole point of saying that is that by the time I was 22 and I had the huge, big, obvious attack where my vision was blurry, like I was legally blind, and walking upstairs was really difficult. There were incontinence issues, and I will share that because, look, this is no joke. What I've dealt with and what's going on here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was absolutely a problem that was affecting my life. And especially because he was a horse trainer and I was a horse trainer.
So you were both crazy. Well, you're both crazy.
Yeah, we're both crazy for sure. For sure, both crazy. Yeah. And absolutely both crazy. Yeah, he was, this is why fathers need to be the ones in charge of who their daughters accept. Sorry, my doggy's having respiratory issues.
No worries.
But this is why fathers should really be in charge of who can get past the gate,
right,
of who should be like really in consideration for their daughters, hand in marriage or whatever. But like that isn't the case, and certainly wasn't the case for me, because this guy would have never ever made it past the first test. But
now is your father still with us today, or did he pass?
He did not pass. He is still with us today.
Okay.
He lives in Europe.
Well, I'm going to ask a question that I know just crossed my mind, so it probably crossed others. Did you ever do a DNA test to make sure he's your dad? No, but I look exactly like him. Okay.
I look exactly like him. So there is no question. Like this is my dad's face. Like, absolutely. Well,
he sounds like a very feminine woman or man, but tell him just stay away from the makeup. He'll be all right.
He's 5'6" actually too. Oh. So I also get like, hey, stop with all this. He has to be this height and this height and this height. I never knew that was a thing until maybe 5 years ago when I started actually watching your content, watching old Kevin Samuel stuff and going, what is this 6 feet and above?
Yeah, I don't know how that started. I think social media And women want to brag, my man is better. And so my man...
That's exactly what it is. Yes, that's what it is.
So it's my man's taller, my man's more athletic, he makes more money. And then it becomes, ironically, it becomes a competition of who has the best guys if we're trophies and not, individual men. And I think the thing that makes me laugh the most about it is that if you look at a woman and you say, man, I wish she had a bigger butt or wider hips, they have surgery for that. I wish she had bigger or smaller boobs, surgery, tummy tuck, surgery, face, hair. Right. Like a woman is 100% fake. And then they look at men and say, I wish you were taller. And look, if you say get hair plugs, I could do it. Could I get jaw implants to have a more masculine jaw? Sure. Could I hit the gym, or I can do everything. But the worst thing you can look at it to most men, at least, is say, well, I don't like your height, because there's, other than breaking your legs in 15 places and all that stuff, there's nothing you can do about it. But it's coming from the women that, in the same token, if you said, I'm not into you, you're a little fat for me, they'll say, you're shaming me.
Right.
You can change your weight. I can't change my height.
I know. And it infuriates me. My sister and I, when we were younger, we used to even joke about, oh, that's too tall. That seems too tall. Like, so the idea of these women are like, he has to be this height. I was like, I don't even understand that. My dad is 5'6", and my mom, she has passed, was 5'4". And I remember, I had this memory of them standing in line to get movie tickets back in the day, and they both had their little hoods up because it was raining out. And I was standing back like with my sister, and I said, they look like hobbits. They look like little elf people.
Well, what are you, 6'3"? What are you, 6'3"?
Who, me?
Yeah.
I'm 5'6.5".
Okay,
so
well then really you're saying you look like a hobbit from behind as well then.
Yeah. But I wasn't saying it as an insult at all.
No, I know.
Like, they're so cute.
Yep.
Like, they're so cute. Look at how cute they are.
I would think women would want guys that are close to their height, because then when you're kissing or dancing, you're nose to nose and toes to toes. And
I know, but what you said, you're right. I think it's absolutely a status thing. It's like, look at mine. It's sort of like them with their handbags. Like, oh, it's this brand, it's that brand, and it costs this much, therefore. And basically they're just saying, I must be better because I have this.
Right.
And it's like, no, it's not at all the case. It's just not. And it just goes to show you how little women are concerned with what's real.
Right. Because
how things seem and how things look isn't what's real. But they don't care about that. They only care about what the other women think. That's it.
Yeah, well, it's competition.
And those women aren't even thinking about them, because the women are thinking about themselves too.
Right. Well, now, so
if women are thinking about something besides themselves.
So have you spent the last 24 years single? Since you're... Well,
yeah, mostly. So after that engagement broke off, I thought a couple of things. I thought, well, I'm damaged goods now, because my body count is now at 2. And so that's just terrible. Like, I'm just disgusting. I really thought this. I thought, this is disgusting. And I had no girlfriends. I didn't. My one friend in college that was like my roommate, she was my only friend in college. Like, I didn't go and meet other people. I don't know what's wrong with me in that way. Like, I've never been super social. So I was never like, I need more friends. I need to go places. I studied and I went places with my friend, and she didn't ever date anybody in college or hook up or go to parties or anything like that. Neither one of us did. We rode our horses and we went home every weekend, and we took extra classes and stuff like that. So, I never had the girlfriends to know what the other chicks were doing. So at 2, I thought, well, and I was thinking of it from, the way God would like, I only wanted to have one, and I wanted that to be my husband. And stupid me, I, did it before I was married, and then he broke up with me. Well, crap.
Right.
And now he's 2. So I was like, okay. And plus, I got this MS thing. And because of how the second guy reacted, I mistakenly thought this is how most men would see me, that I was not fit to be a wife. And I believe that about myself. I'm not fit to be a wife. What can I possibly contribute to their life? What value can I bring? Which I realize now, with everything I've learned, I was like, oh boy, no other women were thinking about what value do I bring. But I was.
Well,
I have value to bring.
Let me feel free to say no to these questions. Just say, no, I want to answer that one, and I'll hop from one to the other. Do you know how to cook?
I do.
Do you keep a clean home? I
do. I'm very, well, I had a person tell me once, she said, oh, you're very much everything in its place and a place for everything. That's a little OCD. I'm kind of the same. I'm kind of the same way in some ways. So I told you I was crazy. I do. Yeah, it's very much that way. But I don't yell at other people for being that way. I was raised to be that way. I was raised to be neat and tidy. My father's British.
Right.
So neat and tidy. And after you clean your room, my dad would say, all right, there'll be inspections.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay.
Well, see, now I know many a guy that would be perfectly happy if you kept a home that clean. Right. I'll try to phrase this politely. Even with your current struggles with MS, would you still be able to satisfy a husband in the bedroom? I'm not talking about swinging around on trapezes and doing, yoga spins things. Would you still be able to be present and there and participating and enjoy it?
Yes.
Okay.
I think so. Now, I've been celibate for 24 years. So.
Well, the reason why I would imagine. well, the reason why I mention this is because if you are in a position where you would like to be with somebody, you have all the opportunity in the world to be with somebody. There are plenty of men that would be happy to have somebody that, yes, you can. I think the body count thing is, I've always put it in one of two ways. If you're a woman that married a military soldier and you had his 2 children and he goes overseas and dies, well, technically you're a single mom of 2.
Right.
If you go out and you go to the clubs and you let guys raw dog you in the bathroom and you do that for a couple of years and you have 2 kids, you're technically a single mom with kids. There's a whole world of difference between all of it. At the tender age of 47, you have less bodies than a woodshop teacher on one hand. You see what I'm saying? So I might say to you, because one of the things I do is I try to help guys, but I might say to you, stop being so hard on yourself, because in the current world that we're in now, with feminism and all the other craziness, to some guys, you would be an absolute gold mine. Physical challenges and all, sure. But, we've all got, as you say, we've all got something. Now, depending on the crazy part, depending on how crazy you are when you go crazy. But
right.
But I might say you in the last 24 years have learned enough at least to know probably what you would look for in a guy. I might say not being so hard on yourself either. I'm sure you would give that advice if I said, this woman hurt me, it's been 24 years that I'm single. I think you'd probably say, well, get out there. There's lots of women that would appreciate you or et cetera, et cetera. I might say the same thing to you. So what is it that keeps you from doing it? Because it's not just the MS thing. It's not just I've got this devastating body count of 2, because that's not how this works. So what is it that's really keeping you from?
Well, this is definitely not something I want to share. But I will tell you, so don't share this in the video.
Okay, hold on. Let me hit pause. Let me hit pause on the recording. Yeah. Okay, you guys can't hear that. That was a very top secret conversation. But in one of the things that you mentioned there, you mentioned MGTOW, right?
Mm-hmm.
Guys going their own way doesn't mean I don't date. It doesn't mean I'm not interested in women or sleeping with them, or even I don't seriously date somebody. Because this is, I think, a mistake a lot of people make. A man going his own way is just a man on his path and his life with his purpose. And you're allowed to tag along. You can come with. It doesn't mean that you're not part of the train, but that guy's going in his direction, right? So, but it's different things. Some guys, when they go their own, because it's a kind of a philosophy, and I'm sure you know this, but I'll put this out there again for anybody that doesn't. It's a philosophy. So some guys say, when I go my own way, I don't need friends. I don't need relationships. I don't need women. I'd rather John Galt go out in the woods and disappear from everybody. There that extremes. And then there's men that say, well, I am married. I have kids, but she knows it's my way or the highway. I have the prenup. We have the agreement. And it was like this before we got married, and she agreed to it. And she doesn't get caught up in the feminism. And so because really, if you think about it, a traditional, very traditional family is a MGTOW family. The man goes to work. He does whatever job he determines is best for the family. He does everything that's right for the family. And they're in they're in a train following his engine. Well, that's really what MGTOW is. That's really men going their own way.
She should join his agenda.
Right.
The wife joins the husband on his path and his agenda. And that is what I believe is right. And so, it's about that. It's about that. And it's about, this world puts I say this world, I call them the overlords, the ones that are anti-nuclear family. They throw everything possible in the path, including feminism's giant one of those blockades, in the path of men and women coming together in the way that we're supposed to.
Do you know why that is?
And because the state is not powerful when the family is powerful and the man leads that family. He's not serving the state and thinking about serving the state. He's thinking about serving his family, and his family's, the wife is serving her children and her husband. And the state is not powerful in that scenario. Yeah. But if you have more to add to that, I'm happy to learn.
No, I agree. I would say the family is the basis of community. Community is the basis or the structure kind of combined with church. So because traditionally, if you looked, you had family, you had community, you had church, and that was the small town. And that small town, if you go look at old Westerns, right? It was people from the outside coming in the small town at first struggling with it, and then they overcome because everybody came together as a unit. Well, that's why if you look at...
Absolutely.
Right. And so if you look at East Tennessee and if you look at West North Carolina right now, they're screaming at FEMA's not doing anything. But the communities have come together. The communities are strong. The people are relying on each other. And all that does is I guarantee you, everybody that's going through this, at least the vast majority of them, are going to say, you know what? I love my neighbor more. I love the people around me more. I love this community more. I hate the government more. And that's why FEMA wants to intercede and gum up the works and come in and take over control, just so they make the person see the state or the feds as big as their savior and not the average mom and dad and neighbor.
Absolutely. My family, my mother told me this. That's the American side of my family. It's from the South. So, and I think those roots are stronger in the South and on the East Coast. But that's a side note. There's a story in my family history where there was somebody's farm got taken by the government, something about like past taxes or some BS, right? And the town got together, family and the community, actual community, when that actually meant something. And they bought the property at auction.
And then gave it back.
Absolutely gave it back.
Yeah,
That's right.
I had heard that story.
F you government. We don't see your authority here. We're taking that. These are our people. And that's what we really are supposed to be about. But there's so many things that get in the way of that, including no-fault divorce and making it so easy to break up marriages, but also making it so that people don't even want to get married anymore. It's not safe for men to get married anymore. Women are, in college and focusing on careers. So it's all of that. And not only that, but this whole idea of a career, the whole idea of you're going to go and you're going to work for this person that you don't know, that doesn't care about you, that doesn't know you, doesn't know your family. That idea, actually, it was, what is that guy? Christopher McCandless, the one man. They made a story, a book was written, and a movie called Into the Wild. He kind of ditched his family.
I mean, he went John Galt.
Yes, exactly. So
it killed him, but still.
He said, a career is a 20th century invention, and I don't want one. And I think that's brilliant. And it is a 20th century invention. It's an invention actually after the Industrial Revolution really hit its stride here in the United States, because factories needed workers, slaves, basically wage slaves. And they said, oh, well, if you leave your family farm or your little trade in your small town, you don't need to be the town blacksmith anymore or whatever. Come work for this factory. It's the right thing to do for your family. You'll have money. You could take it home, and it's a definite. You don't have to worry about your crops or this or that or the other. So, they did that. I don't think it's supposed to be that way at all. I think the family, it's supposed to be more like Little House on the Prairie. And I think that the man, helps raise the family crops and hunts for the food, fishes, what have you, is there a lot of the time to protect his wife and children, multiple children. And the wife is there. None of this housewife, soft life, 1950s baloney.
Right.
That's not trad life. No. You grow a garden. You take care of your family when they're sick. I mean, take care of them. Like, garlic is a great antibiotic. You don't need amoxicillin. Anyway, there's from sun up to sundown or past that, there's plenty of things to be doing as your husband's help meet. And that's what the woman should be doing.
Well, if you think about, if you go back to, go back to the 1800s, even early 1900s, out on the farm, the husband works the field, the wife works the home, the kids support in whatever way, and the only other interaction you have is going into town and bartering, trading, buying, selling with other people that maybe do different things. And I saw this still today when I went to Peru. And I was in many different cities, and I forget the name of the little town I was in. I was only there a few days, but then we hiked up into the mountains. And one of the things we saw when we were up in the mountains, because I was talking to the guide, it was about an 80-kilometer trek in about 5 days. So we were hiking pretty good clips, and we stayed the night at one place. And the guide he spoke Spanish, but as well as, I forget the name of their language, but there's a language that's Peruvian. It comes from kind of like Incan times that came forward.
Right.
And he said this farmer will have maybe cattle, milk, maybe pigs. That farmer might grow coffee, bananas, something. And they don't even use cash. They just trade their goods between. They had just gotten electricity, I think he said a couple months ago, and this is a couple years ago. So you're in the 2020s almost with no electricity. Yeah. And the youngest husband-wife combo you saw was about 14, 15, where 14-year-olds and 15-year-olds were married and they were having babies. You know, it was very much, and underneath one roof that was probably, what's that?
I said, I'm fine with that.
Well, it's going back to almost, well, it's almost like rewinding time. But the thing that fascinated me the most is that you had that there was 15, and then the next age, like their parents were 30 and their parents were 45 and their parents were 60 and their parents, and that's why all of a sudden you realize it was in one household, a pretty big, when I say pretty big, like 50-foot by 50-foot building, and it was just, you know, cement blocks and a very rudimentary roof. But we were camped outside there, and what you would hear at night was them singing, someone was playing guitar, and they were singing and laughing, and it was just a building full of love, and they didn't have, and I was saying, here we are with our laptops and our fancy computers and our phones and our social media, and I don't know if I've ever met anybody family-wise that was as happy as those 4 generations under one roof. It was just, and I think when people think traditional, they think, oh, I want it to be like, you know, like my parents, where the wife cooked and the husband. But I think it was even better before then. But
you gotta go back from there. Yes.
But it's never coming back, if you're here at least. Now, maybe if you moved out to the mountains of Peru. But
the only way it's coming back is if we have an SHTF situation, the grid goes down, all that, and we start over.
Well,
like,
literally.
They're not rolling this back.
Right.
You know, like, there's no way I can't get on the internet. There isn't a number of videos I can make talking about how it was better back then, and everyone's just going to agree, and here we go. No, because you know why? Because the state won't allow it.
Right.
Because that family does not answer to any government. They don't deal in fiat currency. They don't worry about, what are you going to do? You can't pay taxes when you're trading your eggs for that guy's bacon.
Right.
Uh-oh, I guess you're not a slave to the government anymore. And I think it was Bob Marley, and it's not really me to quote him, but I think he said all governments are illegal.
Pretty much. Now, what part of the...
That's a combo to say, well, how can you be red pill content, but like, what about all this political stuff? I'm like, because there is no difference.
At a certain point, you can disregard politics. It will not disregard you. Now, where in the country do you, or where in the globe do you live? I'm ballpark. You don't have to tell me city, but like state or whatever.
I live in the southern United States.
Okay. Well, I mean, if you're in, now again, you don't have to clarify, but yeah, if anywhere from pretty much Florida over to Texas and up to, I'd say, probably South Carolina and Tennessee's, you're seeing a lot more people that are starting to do the pushback against federal government, against, I mean, not only just in their outlook on life, but how they actually live. And I think there's going to be the bipolar split of the country is just going to get stronger. I think more of the weirdo feminist lefties are going to be in California and New York. There was a survey done, or a study done, and they contacted, because there was like 300,000 people that moved to, let's say, Tennessee in the last, I don't know, year or two because of the COVID thing. And they came from New York and some of these other areas. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah. Oh, yes, definitely. I was in California in 2020.
Okay. So, and they did a...
Because of that, but I'm definitely aware. Politics is my hobby. Keeping up with all the politics and all that stuff is my hobby. So, yeah, I'm aware of it.
Well, in Tennessee, they reached out and surveyed many of the people that had relocated here within the last, I want to say 1 or 2 years. 80 or 85% of them were conservative. So even though they were fleeing from the blue states, it was the conservatives that said, I'm done with this. Like, I'm out. Mm-hmm. And they fled to the conservative states. So I think, the Texas to Florida to maybe Southern Carolina's over to Tennessee, and maybe there's a couple more states branching up that you could include in that. But I think there's more. It's going to just keep getting redder and redder. And I think at a certain point, depending on who's in office, if Trump makes it, and I won't go down the politics train too far here, but if Trump makes it into office, you're going to see states like New York and California and Oregon, and you're going to see them saying, we don't want to be part of this union anymore. And then you see someone like Kamala getting in, and you're going to see people in Florida and Texas, and we don't want to be in the union because the pendulum is swinging so violently and so hard now because, Democrat versus Republican used to be this much. And now you're swinging that people are getting flung off the what's the best way? People are getting flung out into where everybody says, just leave me alone, please. There's going to be a lot more independents and people that just say, I'm kind of done with this craziness. And that's why I think that is actually going to grow more, where people don't say I'm Republican or I'm Democrat or I'm left or I'm right. Leave me the hell alone.
Right.
And maybe I'll vote for you if you've got some good ideas, but I don't trust either party. I don't trust the feds. I don't trust big government.
No, it's two sides of the same bird.
Yep.
They all work for the same dang people. You notice during COVID, you notice during any war, it's always, wow, Democrats say this, Republicans say this, but then all of a sudden there's a war and we agree.
Right.
Nobody ever talks about, let's dismantle the Federal Reserve. Nobody talks about that. Well, that's weird.
Yeah.
Well, it's because they all work for the same dang people.
Right.
And there are people that we don't know their names and we'll never know their names. They're so rich that they don't even deal in money. We'll never know their names. We might know Rothschild. We might know Rockefeller. We might know, Morgan, Chase, whatever. But there's people that are so powerful that we don't know their names and entities. And we kind of understand the World Economic Forum, but I think it's even bigger than that. And I think it's been going on for a long time. And I mean, I've said, I just need that tinfoil hat permanently affixed to my head. And people can say that all they want, but they just need to know that they were propagandized into saying that because the government came up with that whole conspiracy theorist term right after JFK.
Right. Yeah.
And they said, oh, those are conspiracy theorists if they don't believe what the Warren Commission says about that JFK situation. I'm like, no, you did it. You're lying about it. And you want to, say that all these people who disagree with your narrative are conspiracy theorists. And it's no different. Thankfully, when I was growing up, my parents were like, oh, yeah, they say Lee Harvey Oswald did it, but it clearly wasn't. And I learned that as a child. Then I went to high school, opened up the history book, and it says Lee Harvey Oswald, ended JFK.
And they never talk how he was a patsy. They never talk about anything else.
No, I couldn't believe it. I'm in high school and I'm like, they're saying this like it's a fact. And I was just shocked because my parents were never that way. Like, we just believe what the news says. I mean, it was still too much. I still voted for Barack Obama 2 times. And I'm like, good God. So I was still brainwashed for a long period of time. But there were certain things where I was like, no, you can't trust what they say. They're protecting themselves.
Right.
So I learned about this whole conspiracy theorist. Like I have said, I did not need the 2020 situation to learn that big pharma was evil and all about, money. I learned that going through the whole MS thing and all the meds they want to push on you with that. I learned that you're not a patient, you're a customer.
Right.
So thankfully, with the red pill stuff and understanding who the real enemy is, and that is the state, it wasn't such a huge jump to get there. So my eyes were already opened to question the narrative and question who wants you to think this way. Yep. And that kind of thing. And to understand feminism has never been what they told us it was.
Right.
Never.
Well, ironically for me, I was very much not into politics. And it had nothing to do with Trump. about the fake news had nothing to do with Trump about that. What I noticed was the media constantly having negative ways to spin everything against men and constantly having ways to positively prop up women, even if they were horrible. And then I see the commercials, the movies, the TV shows, the bumbling dads, the clever, smart moms. And I realized that's really what got me into not trusting media. And then when I started seeing media's lies about politicians out there, that's what made me realize, oh, so all of it's a lie. All of it is a narrative. And that's really what dragged me, ironically, into politics even more. So in many ways, I think it's the same for both of us. It was red pill shows you the truth of many things. And once you know those to be truths, then you can see the lies of the media. And once you see the lies of the media, everything they lie about is right there. Yep.
You can't not see it. You see it in everything. I can't watch any, movies or television or anything without seeing the propaganda.
Yep.
Like even in older things where I was like, oh, this is kind of before. Now I'm like, there was no before. I don't think any of it was ever intended to be just purely entertainment. I don't think that was ever the reason we've had movies or music or anything like that. I think it's always been for propaganda purposes. And I think the primary target has always been women. And the reason for that is because we are more susceptible. Actually, this came up from my video last night that I did, and in the chat, I said, I fully believe that women are more malleable. I am in possession, sadly, of a woman brain. So I know that we are more malleable. And it's obvious. If you have eyeballs, you can see it. Mm-hmm. But why would God make us this way? Well, because and I know feminists, I can hear them screaming, but because it makes we can be personalized for our husbands.
Correct.
We can be raised to a certain level by our fathers to have good character, principles, so that we can know what's right and what's wrong, but then married to our husband, and he can then say, here's kind of the way I'd like a wife to be. And I had somebody misunderstand in the chat and say, well, I don't want her to have the same hobbies as me. And I was like, oh no, that's not what I mean. It's more like, well, the type of food and the type of just the way you go about, like every man is going to have his own personality. And so the woman needs to conform to that to make it a better union. And women are the ones that are malleable, and I think that's the purpose for it.
The way I would explain it is, you can buy a sheep herding dog, and you can train it yourself, and you can buy that puppy for maybe $1,000, and you train it yourself, and now you've got a dog that will listen to the commands of the owner. It does the job in the aspect and in the manner that the owner wants it to, and in return, it is treated like part of the family, and it is loved and respected. Or you may not know how to train a sheep herding dog. Someone else will train it for you, and then they sell it to you for $10,000. I think the purpose in a traditional household was, if you were a boy, your father raised you how to grow food, how to protect the farm, how to be a man, how to take care of the family, how to take responsibility. If you're a young woman, you were taught how to clean, how to be feminine, how to cook, how to take care. And then in the end, when both those grow up, the young man has learned how to lead a family because he learned from his father. The young woman has learned how to take care of a family in her way because she learned it from the mother. So it's almost like making a copy of, mother to daughter, father to son. And then that young man goes out and he asks a woman for marriage, and they start their smaller, slightly smaller photocopy, and then their copy of the family. And the same thing with a woman is that she sees the role of the father as he is in charge of the household. You don't speak back. You do as he asks. She sees everything that's going on. And then she's passed off. In those small towns, it wasn't really, because I've listened to some interviews from some older both couples, men and women, and both have said, well, in where we lived, you didn't have a lot of choice. It was, you might have 2 or 3 other farms, and depending on how many kids survived birth back then, you might be a young man with a choice of two or 3 girls, and those women had a choice of maybe 2 or 3 men, and you hope for the best. But you notice all those families still worked. They still worked. Now today, people have choices of hundreds of thousands of people, and they can't make something work more than 15 hot minutes.
Right. More options it's not better. Right. It does not make it better, because this whole idea, there's plenty of fish in the sea, and where he doesn't work out, don't worry. No, because that makes you not value what you have.
Right. It's the fast food of marriage.
Not being grateful. Yeah. And it comes down to not being grateful. And it's so funny. I was freaking out just now because you were saying about like the sheepdog and this. I actually made this analogy the other night. I was speaking to somebody and I said, now this is, again, I can feel the feminists like getting angry at me right now, but feminists say that, oh, it's so oppressive for the man to be in charge. It's so oppressive for him to be the leader of the family and that she has to obey him. Well, that's like saying when PETA, the people for the ethical treatment of animals, they always were like, you should set your horses free. You shouldn't keep them in a pen. You should let your dogs go loose. How dare I keep my dog trapped in this house? It's so oppressive. Like the PETA people will actually say that. And that's the same as the feminists saying, oh, you're oppressed by your husband because you have to obey him. That's okay. I'm only oppressed if you assume that he is tyrannical and evil. However, just like I, with my dog, want what's best for her and want her to be safe, my dog lives better than I do. She has the lap of luxury. Because why? Because I love her and it is my job to take care of her. And I do that. Does she want to run out in traffic? Yeah. But guess what? She doesn't make the best decisions for herself. So I'm going to make the analogy of, yes, women are going to be dogs in this analogy. And I'm sorry, feminists, but it just works. Look, if I have a husband and I obey him and I respect him and I say, yes, lead me, even if I don't agree with you, even if I am sure you're wrong, I'm going to do it. Because guess what? If we have to guess, I'm probably wrong. Just like Lola, my dog, is probably wrong when she wants to run outside.
Right.
Sorry, it just is what it is. And it doesn't mean I hate women. I actually love women more because they were a lot happier when they were in marriages, when they obeyed and respected their husbands. All this, well, men used to beat their wife. No, they didn't. Not in this culture. Not in Christendom. No, they didn't. You don't have great men like Thomas Jefferson and all these other great men coming out of families where, dad is just coming home and beating the tar out.
I'm pretty sure they would have made a law concerning that if they wanted to make it quite okay to beat wives.
Yeah, exactly. Look, if y'all wanted to do that, you still could. There's not a darn thing women could do to stand against it. We are not physically stronger. We are not more capable. We're just not. There isn't anything we could actually do. We didn't fight for our right to vote. No, we didn't. A bunch of simp dudes and some homely women made that happen. We didn't fight for anything. We can't.
You just complained until people said, well, okay, we'll give you this.
Yeah, we complained. And it was only a very, very small percentage of women who even wanted the right to vote. The vast majority of women did not want the right to vote. Because
it made them be responsible.
It made them be responsible. And they were like, well, my husband votes. Why would I? that doesn't make any sense. Why would I need to vote? This is so stupid. And if you've ever noticed, those women, find me one pretty feminist.
There's not too many of them, I'll tell you that much.
You know why? Here's my theory. Because the pretty women who were feminine, they had good husbands and they were grateful for that situation. And they honored their husbands and they did what they should. It's only the homely ones that I think the overlords could get to, because this was a good way to destabilize society and rip up the nuclear family. The overlords could get to the homely women and get in there like, hey, don't you think that you should be able to vote too, like those men, and and they get in the ears of those homely women, and those women are jealous of the other ones, of the prettier women's situation, and they want to tear that down and tear that apart.
I could.
Still true.
I could see that happening. I certainly could.
It's still true. It is still true. Let me tell you, if you have, even if you walk with a cane, as I do, if you're thin and you have long blonde hair, there's a lot of women who will on sight dislike you.
Yeah.
And dislike is a gentle term.
Yeah. I can't argue with that. I see what flies around on the internet. Now, what are your viewer demographics on your channel? Male to female. I'm guessing it's 90% men.
Yeah, mostly men. As of late, we've had a couple women come in the chat actually, and I'll be like, "Wait, are you a woman?" So yeah, it's mostly men. It's at least 90% men. I really want to be able to reach out to more women because
Good luck.
I know. It's much easier if you get them one at a time and talk to them one-on-one. And I do that in real life. In real life, I actually go out and, if it's somebody I'm speaking to and I see an opening, I'll drop a tidbit here with some of the younger people that I've come into contact with. I've let them know that the biggest mistake I've made in my life is not prioritizing marriage and just overcoming whatever it was in my head that said, oh no, that's not for you. Like I should have prioritized it and I should have had children because I should have grandchildren right now and I don't. And any woman that's like, oh no, I'm happier. No, she's lying. She's lying. It's like, oh yeah, you're happier. Then how come you drink a half a bottle of wine at least per night and
Right.
you're on antidepressants?
Right. Well, is there any parting words you would give to guys looking for? I give out my advice all the time. What would be your advice to not just young guys, old guys, society, whatever?
Well, I don't think it's safe. I can never, in good conscience, say it's safe to go out there and date and marry. And I hate that because I want that for them. I want them to be able to have a nice lady. The problem is, it's not that every woman will, it's that every woman can. And unless and until, family law changes, divorce law changes, I just can't say, go forth. I use your phrase all the time. You can look for a needle in a needle stack if you want to, but you're going to get bloodied up while you do it. And remember from the hot crazy matrix, she can disappear and reappear at any time, at any place on that chart, which means there is no wife zone.
Right.
So,
or we're seeing wife zones 10 years later that she thought she was a wife and she turns out she wants an open relationship 10 years into the marriage.
Exactly. She can disappear and reappear anywhere on that graph at any time. And just because she says, I would never do that, of course they're always going to say that. And they probably believe it at the time. So I just say, please, for the love of God, know what you're risking.
Right.
And just understand that, because I just have seen what it looks like on the other side. And it's terrible out there. And that's such a black pill. But, you know, when you care about men, how can you say, oh, do these 3 tips and it'll be that? Oh, I can't do that.
All right.
But I also would say, if you've been through it, yeah, it's not you. It's the way the world is and the way the world is against you. But there are communities out there, like on Joker's channel. And I say, hey, go to his Saturday night, movie. It's Saturday night, right?
Yep.
The Saturday night movie night. I'm like, go to that and find other men. Be with other men, because society wants to pull you apart from other men. And you need to have that brotherhood. And I think that is a great place to, that's a great piece of advice to give to men. Like, yeah, definitely find your brothers, because they are out there.
Well, Erin, I appreciate you. What?
It's not very good.
Oh.
Not good advice.
Hey, I think it's always a good thing to kind of remind people. That's why, my views have gone down over the years. It's because people get the lesson and move on. I think one of the best compliments you can get is, oh, we know everything you're going to say, man. We don't need you anymore. That's probably one of the best compliments you could actually get, so.
That's true. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you hopping on here and joining with me. I wish you, again, without spelling your current situation, I wish you the luck in your romantic endeavor. It sounds like it'll be an interesting challenge, but I wish you all the luck there. And keep up the great work and keep at it. And I'm sure at some point I'll touch base with you again and see how it's all going for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been quite a pleasure speaking with you.
Well, that was Erin from Far From Eden. I think she's a very interesting woman, a good soul. I think her mind and heart are in the right place, and I wish her all the luck. I'm sure we will be crossing paths with her again at some point. But she does bring up some very good and interesting thoughts on things, on how even women were probably happier in the past if they didn't get trapped and suckered in by feminism. Maybe it's part of the deep state. Maybe it's part of the government to get more workers and more tax. Maybe it's just women deciding they think they know better than men. I don't know what it is, but I think we can all agree that Erin has some pretty good points on that. All right, guys, I will leave it there. We will see you in the next one.